Physician students, welcome to lesson 49, part 2 of explanations of your first multiple choice practice test. We're on the second section, going through some of the questions now. Question 11, I won't look at each question like visibly, but I'll read them, some of them. James draws a distinction between the purpose of the novel, and the answer is the mind of the producer. It's really, we're supposed to see that why that is the correct answer is because it has to do with cause, effect, or like the origin and the result. So the purpose of the novel comes from the mind of the quality of the novel comes from the mind of the producer. And so that a distinction doesn't mean opposite, but he is showing us like a little difference there, the origin and the outcome in a way. So you're supposed to get letter C for 11 because of that. Number 12. From the opening of the passage, it is clear that the author's attitude toward the creation of the work of art, author's attitude, that means tone in the writing. The author's attitude toward the creation of the work of art is elitist. Easy answer, because elitist means that not everyone can do it. Only a select few, those who are intelligent enough. So that's why that's that answer. Number 12, according to James, beauty and truth are directly related to intelligence. Again, the answers are corroborating themselves, right? We're seeing elitist and intelligence, and everyone has to be of a high enough level, to write a good novel. Number 14, axiom. I already explained that, but you should get it from context, right? The word axiom can be defined as a rule of thumb. It's, even if you knew the definition that it was a wise saying, oftentimes something you can depend on, so is a rule of thumb. If you knew that idiom, a rule of thumb. But so that was that one right there. Number 15. There are many other let's look at that. There are many other useful things that might be said to him, but I have come to the end of my article, can only touch on them as I pass. The pronoun him refers to, that's an antecedent question. But at least you don't have to look back to the text. Oh, okay. So they give you this, but what does it refer back to? What does him refer back to? Youthful aspirant, all right? I would have to look back to the text on that. I might be able to just do it more quickly by reading it. All right. The fifth sentence. Right. Okay. So the sentence went like this. If the youthful aspirant take it to heart, it will illuminate for him, for the youthful aspirant, someone who wants to be a novelist. It's an antecedent question. Maybe you're just getting used to those. That's pretty clear. Number 16. In the seventh sentence, the danger that he has in mind is rather, I imagine, that of particularizing. The word rather establishes, well, rather means you are showing something that has some contrast to it. And so which of these have a contrast in them? Antithesis sets opposites together. Right? Paradox, no, not necessarily. It's something that's seemingly logical. But this sets opposites together. It's more clear. Rather, you should just get this really easily, that connection. Number 17. According to Henry James, the freest form of art is writing. I already went over that. That's why I like to go over the passage first. Remember, it's open to any style. I explained that earlier. Number 18, that was one you didn't have, no, it was 17 you didn't have questions on. Okay, you got that correct, most of you will. All right, in the middle of the passage, the sentence, enjoy it as it deserves, I should say to him, take possession of it, explore it to its utmost extent. And then publish it, rejoice in it, includes an example of, okay, this is grammar. People aren't understanding that it's grammar, but when you have enjoy, take, explore, and so on, it's parallelism because it's repetition, but not of the same word. Parallelism can be a repetition of the same word, idea, or structure. Right? So we have the repetition of these structures. Excuse me. The structure is that these are all imperatives. Imperatives mean commands. Enjoy, take, explore. They're all commands. You're repeating the same thing. Parallelism is repetition of the same thing. And it's repetition of imperatives. So the answer was parallel structure. You're learning grammar. Question 19. Yeah, a lot of people had questions on that. All right. I explained this a little bit. But number 19. I mean, you probably have it in front of you, hopefully. If the student follows the logic advice of James in this sentence, this freedom is a splendid, and ending with the truth of things, the student would have to ignore James' advice. So he does tell them to not pay attention to those who tell them to write in this to follow this certain way to be a good writer. He is telling them a certain way to be a good writer. It isn't very rigid, but he is telling them. So they would have to ignore him. Right? He's an old windbag. Number 20, a lot of questions on that. Also in the middle of the passage is a sentence, all of life belongs, and ending with the truth of things. The metaphor, this heavenly messenger, refers to art. All right, so what do we have there? All right, so it says, it is only here and there that art inhabits, or to those who would persuade you that this heavenly messenger wings her way out of life altogether, breathing superfine air. Heavenly messenger goes right back to art. Okay, that is the main noun before that. So he says, I'm repeating, tells you that it is only here and there that art inhabits. This heavenly messenger wings her way. Okay. It's art. Now, number 21, the overall tone. Pay attention to modifiers. If it says in this section, tone is, just look in that section, but throughout the whole passage, what's the tone? Well, some of you said you didn't know what that word meant. Now you're learning. It means to instruct, to teach, didactic. He is instructing youthful aspirants on how to be good novelists and so on. And he is exhortative, means motivating or encouraging someone. So this is what he's doing, right? These are totally not right. He is condescending, but sardonic is like harsh sarcasm, no, right? Reverential, maybe he's admiring art. Laudatory praising, but this one's more true. Remember, AP, multiple choice questions, have others that can be true. Which is more true? Okay? And he's not this at all, really. I mean, he's a little condescending, but he's not to this harsh degree. So he's teaching and encouraging. All right, our next section, that's a fun section. I know someone wrote they didn't like this section, but or it was confusing anyway. So let's start. I got to see my time. Good. Okay, we're moving on to Herman Melville. You're getting good exposure to some writers here. He wrote the novel Moby Dick. Writer again, like Henry James, I think the same roughly time period, but I think maybe more mid 1800s for Melville. All right, so Nantucket, what is it? It's an island south of the arm of Cape Cod, this part of Cape Cod, Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket, 2 islands. So he's writing about the inhabitants of that island and what they're like. But as you're reading this, you're supposed to get the repeated idea throughout. I'm not going to go through every minute detail, but he's having a lot of fun with this. He's using a fair amount of, what do we call this? Let's see. They have to send beyond seas for a spile to stone. Well, that's hard to explain. That pieces of wood in Nantucket are carried about like bits of the true cross in Rome. The ancient relics from Jesus' time related to his life. People in the Middle Ages believed that they really existed and people would sell them to them. They were very gullible. Was any of that really happening on Nantucket? No. This is an example of hyperbole. So his point is that for instance, he says, it makes an utter island by the ocean. Small clams will sometimes be found adhering to them? No. Extreme hyperbole over and over again, but he is saying they're very tied to the sea. That's his point. They live on land, but they're very tied to the sea. The land-sea combination is his point here. They live so much tied to the sea that they live as if they were living on the sea or in the sea. That's his point. Okay, so his his next paragraph. This is how the island, supposedly by legend, was inhabited. Why does he do that? To give a mythic feel to his writing. It's kind of attractive. So they found an empty ivory casket. That was the dead baby's skeleton. When you have that wording, empty ivory casket, that was not literal, that's figurative. And it means, it's a technique called metonymy, an alternate name for the skeleton, or an epithet sometimes, but metonymy, right? That's metonymy, M-E-T-O-N-Y-M-Y. Now, the next section, the next paragraph. Here he's just explaining the slow progression of how they got used to becoming very adept at living with the sea and in the sea. Little by little, they got used to it and took advantage of it more and more. That's a big clam. Quahog, I know that it's in that show on TV, someone's name, but anyway. So moving on. Now there's a question about this. This is a shift in idea. Before we were focused on the island itself more than anything else. Now we're focused more on the inhabitants. There's a question about what's the shift. Pay attention to shifts in idea. All right. This word, terraqueous, it's a mixture of land, the Latin for land, and the aqua, the Latin for water. So the earth is composed of continents and seas, so yes, but that repeats the idea of the water-land connection of these Nantucketers. A Nantucketer, someone asked, is a person who lives in Nantucket. Okay? Okay. I think there's a question later on this, so I'll point it out now. There is his home. There lies his business. Where? Out at sea. All right? So there is reference to the Bible. He alone in Bible language. It even says it's Bible language. Okay? So there's an allusion. And then it ends with the Nantucketer inside a ship sleeping, right, with his or her head on a pillow. He has the whole sea underneath him. Okay? A lot of imagery there. Okay, I think I might have to